So, if I taught you at second year, we went through referencing, and did lots of exercises, but somehow from second year to fourth year, you don't know what referencing is anymore. I don't think people are as pedantic as I am, but because I spend most of my time with postgraduate students now, and they even can't reference sometimes after I've had them for 2 years. But you need to get it right sooner or later, so this is a good opportunity. I reward you with a lot of marks if you reference correctly. And it's just a formula. It's like 1 + 1 = 2, right? That's referencing. The surname goes in a certain place, the year goes in a certain place, the title, the page numbers, etc., they all have their space. And it's a formula, so you need to follow it. So let's start with this little booklet called Harvard for Beginners. I've already emailed it to you. That would be in week 1 material that I emailed to you. For those 3 that weren't in class, I'll email all that material after class, but everything is on Blackboard. And then just go to class videos and watch the 2 videos that I'm going to upload after class as well. And then you'll be up to date with what's happening. So Harvard for Beginners. So it's very important that after you've in-text referenced everything, so what is in-text referencing? Basically how you write is you take sources from different places, from the internet, journal article, books, and you merge it together and you give your own insight. Then you've got to in-text reference each source. What are the 3 components of in-text referencing? What are the 3 items that usually go in?
The surname, the comma, and the year.
No, forget about the comma, but that's important. The surname, the year, and the page number if it's a book or a journal, right? So that is all that goes in. So if it's an internet site or a personal interview, it is only the surname and the year, okay? But if it's a journal article or a book or a newspaper article, it is the surname, the year, and the page number. That is how easy it is. It is separated by a comma, so it's surname, comma, space, the year, colon, no space, the page number. That's it. But I will show you how that works. So in-text referencing is very, very simple. Where it gets a little bit more long-winded is when you get to your reference list or bibliography. So what do I always ask you to draw up? A reference list or a bibliography? A reference list would be correct. What is the difference between a reference list and a bibliography? That you consulted, correct. So a reference list, every item that you in-text referenced, whether you in-text reference them 20 times or once, they would go in your reference list once. Some people get this wild idea, if you in-text reference the same source 5 times, then it must go in your reference list 5 times. No, it only goes in once. A bibliography is if you read 20 articles and you in-text reference 10, all 20 articles would go in your bibliography. We do not use a bibliography, we use a reference list. So I need to see 100% correspondence between your reference list and your in-text referencing. So if you've used 10 different sources in your in-text referencing, it doesn't matter if you've in-text referenced them 20 times or once, as I said, then if you've used 20 different sources, then I want to see those 20 sources in your reference list. Okay, so it's very important after you finish the assignment or essay that you print out your text and then you tick off each in-text reference, you tick it off in your reference list and you make sure there's 100% correspondence. And I will always do a quick sample check. So you may have referenced 50 sources. I'm not going to check all, I'm going to take 3. 1, 2, 3. And if I find them all 3 in the reference list, fine, there's correspondence. But 9 out of 10 times it does not correspond. Because what students often do is cut and paste sources that have in-text references in already, and then they don't in-text reference those references that they cut and paste from the source. So be careful of those type of things. I'm very pedantic about that. So yeah, that's important. So there's lots of rules and you can read through these common errors. So let's just talk about in-text referencing now. So in-text referencing, there's two ways to do it. You can either in-text reference at the end of the sentence in brackets, or you can in-text reference at the start of the sentence. I like you to use a combination of these. I don't want you to in-text reference everything at the end, and I don't want you to in-text reference everything at the start. So there's not really much I can explain in-text referencing in 2 minutes. So here's an example. Say you stated blah, or let's just say blah and blah, right? And now you end the sentence. Let's make this a bit bigger. Let's change this to 14. That helps a bit. Yeah. So at the end of the sentence, you've said something. Now you've got to in-text the reference the author. So you say Ellis, open brackets, Ellis and I don't want this in italics, yeah, it's not. Ellis and Peters, right? So you're using what's called an en passant, the abbreviated when it's in brackets, and Peters to author, comma, space, the year and the page number if it's applicable, close brackets, full stop. That's it. Okay. When you decide to start the sentence, so you say Ellis and Peters, then when it's outside of brackets, you use the full and. Are you with me? Ellis and Peter in full. And you open brackets and you put the year and page number in brackets. And there's no space. 2000:14. And you can say stated. ... Any questions? That's it. You know, so there are a few complications to this, and let's get to that immediately. It's further down, but so we'll do the reference list afterwards. So what happens if you use the same author who wrote a different article in the same year? Now, if you in-text reference this Richards guy, let's just give him a page number. Let's just make this 22, and let's just make this page 19 to 24, right? And let's make this 14. Let's also make this 14, and let's make it a darker color so you can see. Right. So if you in-text referenced, say both of them at the end of the sentence, so you know this would go in brackets and that wouldn't go in brackets. So Richards, and now say you didn't in-text, you just had this as two different sources, or let's just start this one differently, it doesn't matter. And you had Richards reports, okay, Richard reports, right. Now if you had these two sources in your in-text reference, what does it look like to me?
It's one source.
It's one source. So this is page 22 and this is 19 to 22. How do you differentiate between it?
A and B.
How do you determine where the A's go?
It's all.
It's not the order in which you've used it. So if I've used this one first and then this one second, that does not determine the A and B. How do you determine? Sorry?
The date was published.
No, but they both published 2004.
The month.
No. There's no dates or months in these references. The key is, now you remember, it's in your reference list, when you sort your reference list, so you always sort your reference list alphabetical, right? But everything from Richards 2004 is all the same here, and Richards 2004, until when? Until you get to the title. And when you sort it alphabetically, so E comes before S. So the order in which it appears in your reference list determines where the A, the B, the C, there could be a third source. So therefore, this would be Richard's A because E becomes, or let's change, becomes, I want to show you something else. Richard's E comes before S, and this would be B. But now what happens if you got a third source? And he wrote another article. And this starts with ads style. Okay? what happened? Oh, and obviously this was in your intakes referencing that, so you do it A and B. Now you've got a third source in the same year. Take note, it's only for the same year. If this was Richard's 2005, would it get an A or B or C? No, because it provided there's only one, there's no letters because it's a different year, so you can distinguish. So now you've got a third source. What happens to your in-text referencing? Where will this go? This will appear in terms of the reference list, will appear here because A comes before E. So therefore this will become A, this will become B, and this will become C. And therefore this particular reference would become B, this would become C, and say your in-text referenced a third, then this, even if your in-text reference third, it still stays A. Any questions?
If you use page 19 to 24, you have to say 19 to 24 and not to say 19.
Well, generally when you reference in a journal article, you give the full range of pages, right? So what, you say 19 to 24. This 22 comes from source B. It was a book. When it's a textbook, you use the page number that it appeared on, right? For a journal, you generally give the full range. So if the journal was 19 to 32, then in your in-text referencing, you put 19 to 32. Okay, so it's a good question. But it's not that. If you also just give the page that the journal was used, that's also acceptable. But you must give a page number for a book or a journal.
And if the journal is probably like a short one, then it's just one page.
Then it's just page 1. Or whatever page, it could be, page 22. Or a magazine article is the same as a journal. It's referenced the same way. So magazine articles are often one page. Then you just reference the page number it appears on. So that's the one thing you got to take note of. The other thing you got to take note of is what happens if you I want you to do this, is use multiple sources to in-text reference. So say you got all of these guys written in the same year, and you in-text reference, and say it's in brackets here, and it's at the end of the sentence, and you just end with whatever, ads, dot, dot, dot. Okay. When it's in the same year and you multiple in-text reference, you use a semicolon to distinguish between them, and then you would simply place them alphabetical if they're in the same year. So it's black, brown, green, white. If you had other sources, so say you have me, and I wrote something in 2015, then it just goes there. And you took something from the CPUT website, and it was 20. You see, it goes chronological though, the date. And say you took something from Pink, 2002, semicolon. Do you see how it goes? So it goes chronological in order of the years, 2002, 2004, 2015, 2019. Oops, there's a comma I need to put there. And if there are references in the same year, then they go alphabetical. Okay, so this is your intake. I'll show you, I'm going to give you exercises and stuff. So this is just the foundation. Right, so that's your in-text referencing. There's only one other thing, and that's the et al. Part, when there's 3 or more authors. But we'll get to that while we're going through the actual reference list. So that's how you in-text reference. Author, year, and a page number if it's applicable. Okay? And these must match your reference list. Now, you're only going to be mainly using, I would say, 3 sources. You're probably going to use internet, journals, and textbooks. Those are the main 3 sources that will cover most of what you use. This Harvard booklet covers everything. So now let's go, once you've in-text referenced everything, what goes at the end in the reference list? It always goes alphabetical, that's important. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger. And so now this is where the formula comes into being. In other words, it just is how it is. Okay? So if it's a book, So you in-text reference Chase, whatever, page 32, you've in-text referenced that, and you say Chase, if, you know, states, da-da-da. So you've read. Now you need to in-text reference him. So you put the author's name, followed by a space, his initial full stop, the date it was published, what the title of the book was in italics, full stop, where it was published, colon, space, who published it. That's the formula for a book. If there's two authors, the two authors are separated by an abbreviated and. Okay? And that's for all, whether it's a book, an internet site, whatever the case, it's separated by and. If there's three authors, it's the same. You give the initial, Henderson, comma, space, R, full stop, S, full stop. That's one author. You put full stops after initials. How do you separate them? You use a comma to separate each author. So this is the one time where you have a comma after a full stop. So it's Henderson, R, full stop, S, full stop, comma, then the next author. Smith, comma, space, P, full stop, G, full stop. That's the next author. Comma, Rosetta, comma, I, full stop. Then you don't have a comma when you get to the and. For the second last author, you go and. The next author, full stop. Then it's the same as the rest. The year, full stop. The title of the book in italics, full stop. Where it was published and who published it. However, in your in-text referencing, when there's three or more authors, it changes. You don't list all the authors. Okay? So you go Henderson et al. So this is at the end of the sentence. And we'll just give a page number for argument's sake, 32. Okay. Full stop. And they said whatever, dot, dot, dot. Right? Henderson, you use et al. Means and others. Okay? Et al. In italics. Full stop. Right? Then comma, then space, then the year and the page number. Obviously, if it's an internet source, then there won't be a page number. That's how it is. What happens if you use this at the beginning of the sentence? Then it's slightly different. If you start the sentence, you say Henderson et al., you drop the comma, you open brackets, 1987, reported, stated. You see those differences on this video now. I'm showing you, I'm practically demonstrating this, I'm putting it on the video. Yet, when you in-text reference, I get this et al. In every single form. Italics, full stops, commas, all mixed up. But I'm telling you, if it's at the end of the sentence, it's et al. In italics, full stop, comma, space, the year, and page number. If you start the sentence, it's Henderson et al. Full stop, no comma, open brackets, the year and page number. That's how it is. There's nothing to understand. That's just how you do it. Okay? So take note. So, yeah, that's books. If you've got an edition for the book, then it goes like this. Third edition, after the title, full stop, third edition, full stop. Who published it, where it was published. Where it was published in Oxford, who it was published. That's a book. You probably won't use that many books. You'll use a couple. You'll mostly use your textbook, Bouch and Bouch, okay? So and how to in-text reference that correctly is in your assessment guide, is in your subject guide. I in-text referenced it. So you can just cut and paste that into all your practicals. So that's the one source, books. That's how it looks in the in-text referencing. The second and probably the source that you're going to use the most is I do want this hyperlink though, is website sources. So I just want to go yeah. There we go. Okay. So if you take information, and you'll get a lot of information off the net, but often you're going to go and get a journal. Where are you going to get all your journal articles? You're going to get them off the internet, but you don't reference them as an internet source. You reference them as a journal article. It's only the popular press, like if you've got a biz community, e-marketer, all those type of websites that you would reference as websites. So how do you in-text reference it? Is you go see Cape Peninsula University of Technology, the year it was published. So often you can't see the year of the article, and if this is the end like that. Right, Cape Peninsula. So if you can't see the year, you scroll down the website and you see a copyright sign and it gives you a year. Use that year if there's no year date in the article on the website. Okay? So you went to CP and you took something. How do you in-text reference it? You use the organization's name, but first you look for an author. So if I wrote this article and it's on the CPT website, then you would use me. Are you with me? If there's no author, then you use the organizational website. So then we will change this to me. Right. Say I wrote this article. Then you put the title or the link title in italics. You put the full URL, okay? Then you put the date you accessed it. This was the date it was published, 2015. This was the date that you accessed it. So you accessed it, you accessed it next week. 22 February 2000 in brackets. But be very important. If when you do this and you go space and you do that, I do not want this two hyperlinked. Okay? So when you add the date, do a double space. And then go back one afterwards to get rid of it. Because if I'll just show you, I mean, let's just enter. So if I'm just typing and I do one space, I do my brackets, and I type 31 Jan. You see what it does to that 31? It's hyperlinked. I don't want that. But if you do this, you do space, space, square bracket, 3-1, it doesn't hyperlink it. Okay, I don't know why it's underlining here. It's just something I've done here. And then you go back and you just delete one of the spaces afterwards, because I don't want two spaces. But you don't want it to hyperlink that first part of the date. And a lot of you will, but anyway, I'll be sure to scribble a lot. So the 2nd of February is the date you accessed. Just remember, this is the date, the year it was published. This is the date you accessed it. Why is this date important? Because you may have done this, looked at this site 3 weeks ago. Now you hand in your project and I want to check this link. And I go there and now it's not available. Well, you can tell me, you can say it was there 3 weeks ago. Because the date tells me when you went there. Okay. So don't mix it up. In the little examples I give you, I'm going to try and confuse you. You know, I'm going to give you dates that you don't need, just to see if you adhere to this. So that's how and you say you went to the new publishing website, it's the author, or if you don't have the author, the organization, the year, the title in italics, the full URL, and the date you accessed it. Okay, that's it. That's so simple, followed by a full stop. What happens though if you went to Biz Community? Can you reference like this? And you got an article, Biz Community, and you use, but can you use Biz Community in your in-text referencing? Yes or no? You can't use Biz Community. Why? It's like a newspaper. If a newspaper doesn't have an author, you can't use Sunday Times. Okay? Because it's a forum of authors. So what you do is you've got to read the article and see if often they say such and such said. Then where did this information came from? Such and such. So read the article and see if you can't identify who said it. But you cannot in-text reference Biz Community. If there's absolutely no indication of who wrote this, you use anon. You use A-N-O-N. But I do not want to see anons, because the moment you use anon, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to go and check that source and see if there is someone that you could have used. Some people just think, I'll just use anon for everything. You shouldn't have any. If you have one anon, I will still go and check that. So rather come to me. I'm here. If you're unsure of a particular source, Don't ask me how to reference because I'm showing you now, but if you're uncertain about the author, come to me and say, who would be the author of this? And you give me all the information. This is where I got it. So I'm here to help you now to get it right now. Okay, so that's internet, very simple. You can also do interviews, but that's not very commonly used. Again, there wouldn't be page numbers. So if you interviewed Shuttleworth, it would be his surname, the year. You'd say interview with his title, MD of Digital Kings, on the date you interviewed them, comma, where it happened. The next biggest source for you this year is journal articles. You will use a lot of journals this year, academic journals. So it's similar to a book, but not quite. It's also the same as newspaper. So how it works is you put the author's name like you did for a book, the year like you did for a book. The difference is now a journal has both has a journal name and a journal, the article title. So the article title from the journal does not go in italics. So it's full stop, not in italics, full stop. Then the journal itself goes in italics. So Book and Bookman, the journal title goes in italics. If there's no issue or volume, then you use a semicolon, space, and you give the page numbers, comma, and you give the month. Particularly if there's no issue or volume. Here's another journal with an issue and volume. So then you would go again, the author, the year, the title of the article, not in italics, the name of the journal communique, the volume, we go comma, space, the volume 7, the issue 3, colon, no space, the page numbers. Then if there's a volume and issue, you can give the month, but you don't have to, because you've got a volume and issue. Then sometimes they give you a season, so you can do the author, the year, the title of the article, not in italics, the title of the journal in italics, comma, space, the volume, this has no issue, colon, no space, then the season. Fall, what's another word for fall? Autumn. America, they call it fall because the leaves fall. Mind you, they do that here too. So you could use a season, but it's not imperative if you have that, as long as you've got the volume. Then sometimes you've also got a month, so you put the author, the year, the title not in italics, the title of the journal in italics, comma, space, the volume 35, issue 6, page numbers, and you can put the month, but you do not have to put the month. And that's how journal articles are referenced. It's a formula you have to follow. Newspapers are exactly the same as journal articles. So if you have a newspaper, and here we're saying that there's absolutely no author in the Mail and Guardian, they don't identify who wrote this, then you would use a non. Full stop, the year, full stop. The title of the article in the newspaper is not in italics, but the Mail and Guardian, so what is published in goes in italics, colon, space, the page number, comma, the month and day for newspapers. But a lot of newspaper articles you get off the internet these days, so therefore you'd reference those as internet sources, okay, because there is no page number. But journals, these journals you get off the internet, but they will give you the volume and issue and page numbers. So they don't get referenced as internet sources. It's just newspapers. If you go to Times Media and you take something off there, you're not going to have the page number. So therefore you have to reference it as an internet source. And yeah, that's it for referencing really. I've spoken about, your reference list would, anything else? No, you can read through this. I've already emailed it to you. It's on Blackboard. And then your in-text reference alphabetically. So this is just an example of what it could look like. Okay, don't save. I just want to stop recording here because I'm going to show you examples.